Hi everyone. Okay, so welcome to episode 2 of the Wellbeing Sessions with me, Helen Roscoe. This week I'm chatting to Claire Bradshaw, and Claire and I have known each other now for two and a half years, something like that. And we met because she started coming to my yoga classes and described what it was that she did, and I was intrigued, and we realized that we had lots of crossovers. So Claire is a executive coach and coach trainer. She's passionate about making a positive and sustainable difference for individuals, communities, and organizations. She brings a systemic approach, compassionate energy, and a drive for lasting improvement and growth. You only need to look at Claire's website to know where our crossovers lie. When you go into one of her toolbars and it says space, nurture, well-being, kind of words that I would use in a yoga class. So in our conversation today, we're going to be looking at our many crossovers that we've discovered just through our conversations when we're sitting and chatting about our next collaboration. We're going to have a chat about those crossovers and also a little bit more insight into Claire's approach as a coach, her latest venture, the Outdoor Coach podcast, as well as some future collaborations that we are going to be working on in the next few months, hopefully. So yeah, welcome, enjoy. If you have any questions, if you'd like to contribute to the chat, please do. You need to subscribe to YouTube in order to be able to contribute to the chat. So if you are here and you'd like to contribute, you can do. And we'll take some questions at the end should anybody wish to ask. So yeah, welcome, Claire.
Hello.
So thank you. Yeah, thanks for joining me. How are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm all right, thank you. It's been a relatively relaxing day, obviously mostly at home, out in the garden, just had a barbecue. So yeah, I'm good. Although by this time of night, I have to say I'm usually winding down. So
Yeah, it's quite
as possible.
challenging, isn't it, for parents to be alert beyond 8 p.m. I think we're the same as well. Um, just to sort of start our conversation, I just want to ask you a little bit about how you're finding the pace of life at the moment, you know, kind of working in the current climate, and what you are doing to make sure that you are looking after your well-being.
Yes, interesting question. Thank you. Um, so as I answer this, I'm really mindful of the fact that I'm in a privileged position, I guess, in that, you know, I am lucky enough to live in a house with a good outdoor space. So I've been appreciating that. Um, Being grateful for the fact that my family are at home with me and we're safe. I've been enjoying the slower pace, if I'm honest. I've been enjoying not being crammed on a train travelling into Manchester or further afield, and not racing around. You know, it used to be I'd say kind of bye to my husband on a Monday morning, and it was almost like, you know, see you
Mm.
Friday. You know, as we're running around for the children, for work, for different things. So certainly the slower pace I've appreciated, and I think all of us actually, all of the family we're quite comfortable in our own space and
Mm.
our own conversations and thinking. So I think we've perhaps because of that found it a bit easier than people that really thrive on kind of hustle and bustle and, you know, the energy of other people. So yeah, it's we're okay. We're okay.
Good. Um, so when we first met and we were having a chat outside the yoga studio after the first session together, and you sort of stopped and you asked, you know, you just wanted to ask a few questions about the way that I taught as a yoga teacher, and you know, what's the approach, what am I doing, and I just sort of realised at that point that I think I might have even come home and told my husband about you. Um, And I was sort of always had in my mind that a coach, because I come from an athletics background, a coach was somebody who would train you more physically. So when somebody would describe themselves as being a coach to me, I would always be like, well, who do you coach? What do you coach? Like, as in thinking about, the kind of the sporting arena and coaches within the sporting arena. So my first question really is, what is your approach as a coach? How would you describe yourself as a coach? And why might people come to work with you? So what kind of brings you into the sphere of coaching? What is coaching in your words, Claire?
Okay. So, well, I think I'm not surprised that coaching brings up that for you, particularly, with your athletics background, as you say. And there are some similarities, I guess, between coaching athletes and the kind of coaching that I do. It is about performance. It is about potential and all of those kinds of words as well. So, coaching, it's not a cozy chat over a cup of coffee. There's purpose and there's intention, and you're tapping into human psychology, as I guess athletics coaches are a lot of the time, around motivation and drive and so on. I think for me, a lot of coaching is around helping people develop their self-awareness, in order that they have knowledge and understanding of what's going on for them personally, and from that point, with that awareness, they can then make choices, make decisions, and move to where they value and where they want to be. So I guess in athletics coaching, it might be, there's a whole host of evidence around, the best way to do particular things or the best approach to things. And for me, coaching is very much about working with individuals. So what works for one person is unlikely to work in the same way for somebody else. So what that involves is a lot of listening and responding to what's going on in that particular conversation that you're having with somebody as a coach, and working with them because it's their stuff, in their kind of world, if you like. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. And so, I mean, it's quite similar. We've said this before in conversations, but in terms of many of the goals that we're working with in yoga and many of the goals that you're working with in coaching are quite similar. So kind of helping people develop their self-awareness is, what we're doing when we're practicing yoga, is tuning in and kind of being able to be aware on a much more kind of embodied level. But, at the end of the day, that self-awareness that we learn in a yoga class then enables us through our day-to-day lives, because we are more aware of what's happening, whether on a subconscious, on a more kind of unconscious level, or on a greater kind of more gross level. But it's really useful generally for people to kind of tap into that and develop it. In terms of the people, the kind of organizations that are seeking you out, who are you working with? What type of people come to work with you?
Yeah, okay. So I suppose the first thing to say is, I guess people are people, and you'll find this in yoga as well. We have a lot in common with each other. So I work with a whole range of people from all sorts. My background is largely working in the public and voluntary sector. So I suppose my natural network sit there. So I work with lots of people in the NHS, in local government, higher education, at all levels as well. So I might work with some very senior people, and I might work with people, just starting out in their leadership journey, if you like, as relatively new to that. And I suppose that's another important thing about coaching, thinking about your definition. as different to other kinds of things that people might think of as coaching. So like mentoring, for example. So coaching, you don't need to know a whole lot about the world that somebody operates in order to be effective in a role of a coach. So I've worked with a judge, I've worked with a large number of social workers, academics, people, about whose world I know very little. But it comes down to the fact that they're people at the end of the day. Yeah.
And are these people sort of coming to you because they've realised that they need some support? Yeah. Or is it more their kind of organisation that thinks that this group of people should be going to kind of work more effectively together?
Yeah, so good question. So a bit of both. So sometimes the catalyst for it is the organisation or somebody within the organisation, maybe somebody's manager or maybe somebody in a learning and development function or something like that. Often it's linked to development and progress. So coaching is definitely not, some kind of remedial intervention, and it's because people want to grow, they want to explore. So quite often I work with people who are either new into an organisation and want to find their way around in terms of, style and approach that they might use, or it might be people that are seeking in their next career move and they want to explore that and see where they might end up, or people new in a role and they're finding their feet and they need somewhere that's neutral, a space where they can take that stuff that's not the manager, that's not the partner, that's not a colleague, that's non-judgmental, and where they can be honest and really open up.
Okay.
A bit like yoga, really.
It is like the yoga when you sort of say when people can grow and explore. It's a similar process that we're working with in yoga, and especially the kind of language that I use. I know that we have a lot of crossovers in the language that we use in coaching and the language that we use in yoga. One thing that we both, and I haven't touched on this, but one thing that we both kind of realised quite early on is, we both live quite in a more rural setting, and we live fairly close to each other as well. And you offer coaching outdoors kind of programs and retreats, and you asked me to join you on your first coaching outdoors retreat, which was amazing. I really loved collaborating with you on that. So what was it that made you think about taking coaching to an outdoor platform?
I think, lots of things kind of like they do often, the universe conspires to kind of lead you in a certain direction. So, most of my life I've lived in locations with easy access to the outdoors. So I studied in Lancaster and Sheffield, obviously near to the Lake District, near to the Peak District. I've lived in Derbyshire for most of my life. And as a family, we do loads of active stuff. So it's there, and I have a love of that. All my best decisions are made on a walk. That seems to be a pattern, all the big decisions in life are usually made in an open space somewhere. So there's that. And I think I started to notice that, the patterns that I was able to think differently in a different environment. And I started to explore that, and soon realised that, that's part of being human. We respond emotionally and physically and mentally differently in an outdoor space. So it often one of the reasons people come to coaching is because they're stuck with something. They've perhaps had something in the head that they've been churning over for a long time, and they can't move forward with it in some ways. And what sometimes happens is that if people work in organisations, they might try to unstick it by thinking about it some more, and their thinking's gone round in circles. And by taking people outside, it has a freeing effect on their thinking, a creative effect on their thinking, a new perspective, I guess. And they can almost you can almost feel people stepping out of maybe a role or the confines of a particular way of looking at something when they go outside. And that, and it doesn't have to be a green space. It could be an urban space, but somewhere that invites something different.
So it's that kind of fresh perspective, gives people an opportunity to to take themselves out of their normal environment and be inspired by nature, and what that can bring about in terms of the response of what they decide they want to do, kind of making the important decisions. Perhaps it unlocks some of the tension around those decisions and they can talk more freely about those decisions. I don't know if that's
yeah, absolutely, it's absolutely that. And I think, and there's some evidence, that some quite strong evidence now about the well-being effects of being outdoors, the attentional effects of being outdoors, particularly in green spaces. So it helps us to focus and to hold our attention in a particular way. And there's some evidence to say that actually we become more connected emotionally with ourselves when we're outside. So suddenly these decisions or these things that people are stuck with are not just in the head. You're inviting in other ways of knowing and exploring, emotionally and physically as well. All your senses are stimulated outside, the smells, the breeze, the sounds, and heightened senses in that way just bring in other things into the equation, I guess.
Yeah. And you've mentioned before about the use of metaphors and how you can draw upon the landscape and the metaphor of a landscape in order to kind of help people problem solve or help people kind of get through a decision that they need to sort of encounter, and thinking about how maybe going up a hill or that kind of journey of walking up a hill, and what obstacles they might come across as they try and take that journey up the hill, whether there's a stream they might need to cross or whether there's rocks they might need to climb, and what are they going to see when they get to the top of the hill, like what's going to be there for them. Like, it's a really beautiful way to, you mentioned in one of our conversations earlier today about the tree, kind of looking up at a tree and how there's all these branches and suddenly there's a lot of options that arise, and you're really small in the whole scale of things. There's just so many amazing ways that you can work with nature in order to kind of unlock those maybe boundaries or tensions that you may be holding on to. And it's your work kind of in this area that's gone on to inspire your latest venture, the Outdoor Coach. We might as well touch on that as we're talking about nature and being outdoor and learning outdoors. So you've started a podcast, and there's short mindfulness-based practices that people can just kind of plug into the headphones and either sit and listen and then go and walk. And do you want to just maybe talk about that and why you decided you wanted to do a podcast?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I'm very excited about it, I have to say. It's a new venture for me. And I think there's a number of things that have kind of come together at the same time. Not least, I'm not able to do coaching outdoors in the way that I've been able to do before lockdown, and the situation that we're in now. So having gone from recognizing that there's great power in it, to not being able to work in that way. So there was a question about, well, how can I still help people to connect with this? And then there's with the outdoors, that is, there's also the fact that we're probably walking a lot more than we used to. We're at home and we're restricted on the other things that we can do, but walking is something that we can all do within the constraints. And I mean, yoga has really amplified my interest in mindfulness and meditation and all that brings. So if I couldn't be with people, walking kind of with them, how could I do that? And I wanted to do it as a podcast because I think it's useful for people to be able to, like you were saying about walking up the hill and crossing the stream, to take in their environment, to see that for themselves. It's unique to them in that moment, but to have some guidance around it. So it's almost like what they see is a coach for them. I'm offering some input, some questions, some stimulation, some mindfulness, and people are able to work with that themselves to get where they want to be.
And are these podcasts then targeted towards coaches, or could anyone listen to them?
Yeah. So the first one that I did was targeted towards coaches, and that was about so coaching outdoors is there's a bit more to it than taking somebody out for a walk or something like that. And I wanted to invite coaches to think about their own relationship with outdoors and to understand that a little bit more, in order that they could then be of best service to the people that they're working with. So that's where it began. But actually, I had I'll tell you one thing about lockdown. I've had some brilliant conversations with other coaches who have been so supportive, and we've bounced ideas around. So after a couple of conversations, came to recognise that this is not just for coaches, this is for everybody. So the subsequent ones to that have been they're accessible to anybody, and you don't even have to go out for a walk. Actually, you could just sit in an outdoor space and just listen as well.
Yeah, sorry. I'm making notes as I go along because I'm like thinking about things that this can link onto. But I think, a lot of the time it is important just to sit and in nature and be with what's around you. And if you're uncomfortable with that on your own, then having a little guide of what you may be able to resonate with, or what you may be able to feel that perhaps if you were there on your own, you might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. You're not really sure how long you want to be there for. Just having something to kind of tune into can be really useful for you to actually just be still and notice. And I think a lot of the time it's the noticing that is the really powerful stuff. It's kind of noticing how you respond. How does it make you feel? How does nature make you feel when you sit and observe and take in and explore what's around you? And maybe it will affect what you want to do afterwards. So the path that you thought you were going to choose, maybe you'll take a different route because actually you're feeling a little bit more adventurous and a bit kind of more trusting in yourself. So I'll put a link to your podcast on the chat on this as well, because I think I listened to the first one, so I need to catch up on some of the other ones.
Cool.
But just sort of thinking about, you said how lockdown, this podcast sort of started right at the start of lockdown, wasn't it, that you did your first recording? And since then, obviously, with your Coaching Outdoors program, which you were going to do outdoors in June, you're now doing online. And you've started working with people kind of in coaching outdoors, but remotely. So how are you finding that? Because you've done some kind of coaching sessions, haven't you, where you've set people on their way to kind of go and do the task, and you're with them kind of virtually there, and you're talking them through, and it's a really new way of working, isn't it? But how are you finding that? Obviously it's going to be different from being with somebody in person and being able to have that kind of same chemistry, but there must still be kind of a connection that is able to flow through in those communication that you're having.
Yeah, it has been really interesting, and I'm still working on it. I'm just doing loads of reflecting on how it is, and seeking feedback and reflection from the people that I'm working with in that way as well. So the first thing to say is that the people that I've been working with outdoors remotely are people that I have had a kind of face-to-face coaching relationship with already.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for their psychological safety. For that, you said the word connection, you know, for having an established connection with people before then. You know, when we work inside, there's the space itself contains and supports people emotionally, and in terms of their thinking and so on. And outside is different to that. It is more spacious, so the work that you're doing together has to enable people to do what they need to do in a safe, psychologically safe way. So yeah, I found myself doing all sorts of things. I mean, I've coached remotely, but not outside before. So I've done, you know, coaching via Zoom and coaching on the phone. And quite often when I'm coaching on the phone, I end up with my eyes closed. I've noticed to really focus in on how, you know, the tone and the way people are speaking.
Yeah, it's the same with me when I'm teaching yoga as well.
Yeah, it's, you can, I don't know, there may be something about focus and connection there. But I think people are enjoying it, you know, as a different approach. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the working with people, with other coaches, to support their journey, maybe coaching outside, but remotely. Very
just the way that we have to sort of rewire, isn't it? We've all had to rethink our approaches to things, and it's incredible that you can still continue to offer the same intention around the coaching and remotely. It shows a lot of trust between the client and you, in order for you to be able to hold that space, and yet they're on the other end of the phone, and you know anything could happen in that moment, and you're sort of there to sort of just nudge them and kind of guide them. It's incredible that you can still make that happen, definitely.
And
So
I was just going to say that
yeah,
that about your yoga, though, in the same way, you know, we've moved from a space with lots of people, or a small number of people, actually, a really great number of people in a room, to Zoom.
yeah.
And so what's that like for you then, as a, you know, moving from one kind of space to another kind of space in terms of your teaching?
Yeah, I mean, initially when I first launched the classes on Zoom, I was just terrified. I don't know why. I was so nervous about setting up and kind of suddenly going live and being in this situation whereby I didn't really know to start with, because there were people who I was just sort of offering them to people who sort of prepaid for their classes, and I just didn't want people to kind of miss the moment to, you know, or even miss that kind of slot. I don't know, I just felt this kind of urge, right, we'll get them going, and my husband really helped me, and we thought, okay, let's just do it and we'll see how we go. And kind of that first night when I had everyone there, and it was really, it was kind of terrifying to suddenly just be on the other side of a screen and not necessarily knowing who was going to turn up, and how nervous would I feel, kind of putting myself on the spot. You know, I'm not there as a teacher, as a yoga teacher, to perform. And it felt very much like a kind of race again, like I was, you know, an athlete again, kind of under the spotlight. But it's kind of become the new norm. So I realised, actually, like you, when you said that you close your eyes and kind of tune in when you're talking to your coachee in that way, in front of the camera for me, and if I'm teaching yoga, I just close my eyes, because I don't necessarily really want to be looking at the camera that much, because what I feel is what I want to teach. And I actually come to found that when I'm teaching a yoga class via Zoom in my own space, I'm very much in a flow. I'm very much kind of in the zone of yoga, because I can't really fully see what everybody's doing. So really, it's very much, I don't know, it feels very intuitive in terms of the way that I'm practicing and the way that I'm teaching, because I'm doing it with you, because you need to kind of see that it's, you know, where we're going and what's happening. I mean, I am sort of watching people, and I am keeping an eye on what's happening, but it's not like I can be there and sort of fully see if you're moving yourselves unhelpfully or unhealthily rather. But also it gives people an opportunity to kind of take back that self-care, and I'm sort of handing that over to everyone there. So yeah, it was strange at first, but it's kind of become the new norm. And then it's helped me launch other things, such as YouTube live yoga, and these conversations. I decided I wanted to just do something that wasn't a yoga session, but where well-being was kind of at the heart of it, and it included things that I was interested in, such as creativity, nature, yoga, and well-being kind of being that kind of all-encompassing part of the conversation. And then subsequently I've been asked by Bamboo Clothing to teach on their Instagram TV. So it's kind of all fallen together, but over, each time I do something new, it's this like, oh my God, this big kind of hurdle that I have to overcome because I'm going to be in the spotlight again. But really, I just sort of take a few deep breaths and it's fine, just sort of get into the flow, and it's okay. But I'm really looking forward to being in a space with people again and teaching people. Just being able to give people a hug, and I'll probably continue with at least one online yoga offering as a result of this.
Okay.
But it's also been quite draining, I think. Just kind of everything being a virtual exchange is quite a draining process. So yeah, how are you finding the online classes?
Similar, actually, I think. You mean the yoga classes? Yeah. Well, as you just
the yoga classes are so draining.
I'm doing loads of classes online. I'm doing a poetry class online. It's very good. So as you were talking then, I was reflecting on space, because that is one of the words that we both talk about in lots of different ways, isn't it? And how actually there's something that I enjoy about a yoga class in a neutral space, or a space that is not my home.
Yeah.
Because in the same way that I was talking about the effect that the outdoors maybe has for people, in that you can let go of the 10 roles that you've been playing for various people that day, mum and work and colleague and daughter and all those, and just be in the yoga space. And I think from home that feels very different. On the one hand, it's really accessible. I don't race into the session quite as quickly as I perhaps did before, going from one thing to another, and it's comfortable and things. But I am slightly conscious of the fact that there is an impact, me doing yoga at home, there is an impact for other people in my home as well. But then I'm wondering whether having practiced with you in a Zoom yoga class at home will mean that kind of embeds my own personal yoga practice a bit more, because I'm more used to doing it at home, and I haven't got an association of it being something away.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been quite difficult for some people to actually come to do the online classes because they haven't been able to find that space at home that they've wanted to. It's easier for people to carve out the time if they know they're going to go to a class. Whereas if you're at home, suddenly there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of things that want to kind of take you away, and you can easily just sort of let those distractions take you. So I think to sort of do it from home, you have to be quite disciplined, and then that does set you up quite nicely for establishing a home practice, and just carving out that time in your day to sort of set aside for yourself. I think it is quite useful for people, but it's, for those people who are struggling to sort of get to an online class, I completely understand why. Because the first thing that you need to do is make sure that you have a space that you can practice in, and that space is private, that you're not going to be disturbed, and that you feel comfortable practicing in that space, that you have the things that you need around you. And, there's quite a few things to consider, really. So let's have a little think about maybe some of our other crossovers. We've mentioned before the power of the pause. I'd quite like to tap into that, because I know in coaching you've got your own kind of pause and what happens in the pauses, and in yoga we have our pauses as well. So maybe if you just sort of have a little explain what the power of the pause is in a coaching context, and then I can maybe allude to what we might think about and where the crossovers are within yoga.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's an interesting question. I could go on for ages. I'll try not to. So the pause in coaching, I suppose, relates to the fact that it's really easy in conversation, at least, and of course that's what coaching is. It is a conversation, sort of, to assume that when nobody's speaking, nothing's happening. So when there is a pause, the tendency in a conversation, and ordinarily, is to fill it. And usually we fill it with our own stuff, or sometimes a question. But actually, there's a lot happening in the pause. Okay. So people are mulling things over, they're reflecting, they're still continuing to think, they're sitting with something that might be new or that they're trying on. A whole host of things can be happening in that space. And some of the feedback that I've had from people that I've worked with have talked about how powerful that is, and sometimes a bit disarming, I think, because people want you to feel it. I think the thing about coaching is that you're inviting people to find their own way that's right for them. And sometimes what people can do consciously or unconsciously is ask you which way to go, or ask you for advice or guidance, and the pause gives them space to find their own way. Does that make sense?
Completely. So is a pause that is in the conversation, and you don't fill that pause with what maybe a projection of what you might consider is going to happen next, but maybe you try and encourage them to be with that pause as well, or are they just naturally in a pause and you're just leaving them? So do you encourage the pauses?
I think probably I do. It's a good question. I'm gonna go away and look at it now. Afterwards, I think there's something about pace in coaching. So, particularly if you're in organisations, you turn up for a coaching session, whether that's inside or outside, and quite often people have had a really busy time before they get to you, and they might have a really busy time planned out afterwards. There's something about a coaching space that gives permission and invites actually actively people to slow down and pause from all of that kind of melee around them and really properly consider, or sometimes people, we don't even know what's going on for us until we pause.
And when they slow down their pace, those pauses naturally happen, don't they?
Yeah.
And that is the same in yoga as well. Very much when we talk about the pause, we're quite often referring to a space in between the inhalation and the exhalation. So it's a more embodied experience of a pause. And we're not necessarily asking people to hold that space. We're just asking people to observe it and to find it. So rather than, a lot of people will kind of grasp the breath and almost rush into the inhalation because, I don't know, there's some kind of deep-rooted anxiety, or there's stuff that's kind of surfacing. They don't feel fully comfortable in their bodies, or they don't feel fully comfortable being with their breath. So quite often the breath can be quite rushed, can be quite forced. And as soon as people have the opportunity to slow down the pace of their breathing and slow down the pace of their movement, then within that space, there's an opportunity to pause. And it's within those pauses, so it could just be like a split second of a pause between, usually for me, I find the pause at the end of the exhalation is easier to kind of slip into before the inhalation arrives. Other people will find it different. But you can be there for a while, and then the inhalation just naturally arises and takes you to the next thing, to the next experience. And in that kind of moment of pause, there's like a deep stillness, peacefulness that arises. And it's from that stillness that the clarity, you can start thinking a little bit more clearly. So it's quite similar really to kind of you just allowing people to have that pause. Because what arises from that pause can be quite transformational.
Absolutely. And gosh, if you interrupt it, what an opportunity missed.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I sometimes, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, but in your, so after we've done a sequence in yoga, the invitation to pause and notice.
I think we're off. Oh, we're back on. Everybody. Oh dear, the internet, this virtual world. There must be so many people out there right now trying to connect onto this virtual world that we're living. So yeah, that power of the pause, we just had one. We just gave people a little break.
Yeah.
So yeah, pause and reflect. I mean, it is also, obviously I talk about the pause in between the inhale and the exhale, but those pauses in between movement, be still, resist the urge, be still, let the effects settle, and then we can move, and then we can begin again, So moving on, because we haven't got long left, Claire. Let's just have a little chat about something that we're going to be doing together in about a month's time. And initially, Claire and I were going to be doing a workshop on purpose, and we'd scheduled to do it around the time of the summer solstice. So we've decided to do a webinar instead, and it will be a donation-based webinar. So we're going to be raising money for Ruben's retreat, where we would have been hosting the workshop. And our theme is purpose. So why don't you just say a little bit about how that may look and why I'm doing it with you?
Okay. Oh well, that could why we're working together. That's I think anybody that's listened to this conversation can see the synergies between how we work. And I think as you were talking then about pause and reflect before you move, for me, I think that's what the workshop is about. We have experienced a different way of living, a different way of working. Let's take some time to pause and observe in ourselves the effects of that before considering then what that means for us moving forward. So what have we learned from our experiences over the last, well, by then it'll be like 16 weeks.
Yeah.
Take stock. What is that telling us? And from that point, consider our purpose and think about what that then means moving on from that. So like when we've worked together before, that what I think is a glorious amalgamation of physical yoga practice, mindfulness and curiosity and questions and reflection. So there'll be movement obviously, and time to pause and reflect with other people who hopefully will come along. So I think both of us have a strong belief in the power of a collective, the power of a group. So facilitating people's interaction with each other in that space is going to be important too.
Yeah, so it's going to be quite an interactive workshop with some led sessions. We were looking at about an hour and a half, weren't we, for the time?
Yeah.
So some kind of guided yoga practice and some guided kind of insights from yourself, and then allowing a discussion around, yeah, where people are at. And I think there's definitely something for us to think about moving forward in terms of what may change, what may be different, or what do we hope will change, what has arisen as a result. And yeah, just honouring yourselves, giving yourselves that time to actually explore ideas. Much of our time as parents, I don't know about you, Claire, but for Dave and I, we're kind of, this time in lockdown has been very much a juggling act. So the only thing that's really structured are these sessions and the yoga sessions, and Dave's really working with me to sort of make sure everything happens as and when. But the rest of it, we're just kind of running around, kind of trying to find our feet. And we've got ideas, we've got things that we want to do, but we've just never got enough time to kind of set aside and really talk about it. So I think a workshop like this will be really powerful for people who are kind of wanting to maybe look at their purpose and also tap into their own awareness of where they're at and what they're bringing and what they may want to sort of leave with. Yeah. So is there anything else that you want to share, Claire, or anything else that you kind of want to talk about before we leave today?
Oh.
I mean, for you, what would you like to imagine will be different? Maybe on a personal level, maybe on a global level. What do you imagine?
So let's start small and work up.
Yeah, start small, micro.
Yeah.
And build it.
I think I suppose I'm hoping that we'll keep on to some of those things that we've been able to refocus on in the last few weeks, that with the pace of life as it was before, it was easy to take for granted. So to appreciate other people, to appreciate our environment, to live our lives in a respectful and attuned way to the space that we're in, and to the communities that we're in as well. I hope that we can keep hold of all of those things beyond this, when things start to shift again. I'm not sure I can think much beyond that.
I think that's enough. I think
it's exhausting, the rethinking and the rewiring and things, and it's constant, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just happy to feel settled. What about you?
I mean, that rewiring thing, we're going to have to rewire again, aren't we? That's the thing. We just get used to being in a certain way, living in a certain way. I've really enjoyed not having the pressure of having to get the children from one place to another, and not having the pressure, I guess, of a wider responsibility, kind of just thinking about how we're doing and have we got everything we need, are the children happy, and then sort of taking into the community, exploring our village has been fantastic, and I think people have been respectful to the environment around here, and it's been nice. People have been friendly. Pace has been, it's been nice for me, I find, to have that slower pace, and I'm already feeling a little bit kind of worried about the onslaught, this shift of moving to something of a faster pace again. I guess we've all been given a pause in many ways, and it's sort of thinking about what can we do to move forward in order to just, make a difference, based on our experiences? Can we have a positive output from this? Can we take care of ourselves more lovingly? Can our relationships be more meaningful? Can we look after our environment? You know, there's just so many lessons to be learned. And yeah, maybe just not putting so much pressure on ourselves to perform, to be at the top of the ladder all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I came across a phrase this week that was around toxic productivity. You know, and this, you know, you see things which, you know, if you've not learned Japanese by the end of lockdown, then you've let yourself down, kind of thing,
Yeah.
or if you've not done this or you've not done that. And actually, the pressure that, as you say, that we put on ourselves is not helpful always. And this idea of toxic productivity. So what's okay? You know, what's that balance between being actively supporting others, actively supporting our families, actively growing and developing, and pausing. And as we're talking about pause, I'm just really mindful of people that have not stopped through lockdown as well, you know, who have been so busy. How can those of us that have been pausing and slowing support those people that have been so pushed out through this time? You know, what's the balance like there? How can we give them rest?
Yeah, completely.
Time.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice, Claire. That's a nice point to end on, I think. So yeah, thanks. Look at Claire's shed, everybody. So this is where Claire works from, and her setting. She has this garden, like she's set right in the heart of nature there. And I know, like, you have wildlife at your door, squirrels and foxes and birds.
Yeah, badgers that ate all the tulip bulbs this year.
Yeah. Well, you know, if you live in a woodland, you can't escape the woodland. So I don't know if there is anyone kind of listening or observing, but we haven't got any questions live for the chat. But, you know, if anybody does have any questions as a result of the conversation that Claire and I have, feel free to put them on the comment thread, or you can email me directly. It's yoga@helenroscoe.com. So yeah, I'll make sure that people know about your podcast, Claire, and I have a link to, we'll be getting our purpose workshop. We're looking around the 25th of June, is that right? A daytime workshop. So we'll start getting some information about that soon, and you'll be able to see how Claire and I work. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening, Claire. Thank you so much for setting time aside to have this conversation with me.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've got loads more questions.
I know, it's like we really did only touch the surface, and I think, you know, there's a lot of other things that we can talk about. So we'll get there again another time.
Yeah. Okay. Enjoy your evening too.
Yeah. Thanks, Claire.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye. Bye. Okay. So thanks everybody for coming along. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with myself and Claire Bradshaw. If you do have any questions or comments, then, you know, you're welcome to get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love your feedback. If you did enjoy the conversation, please like it and leave comments, subscribe to my channel. That would be fantastic. And we'll be in touch with future episodes, as well as YouTube live yoga practice, which will take place next Tuesday. So look out for that one. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening or your day, wherever you may be. And yeah, be in touch soon.